Hi, guys. I'm going to read a couple paragraphs, maybe a couple pages here from The Ethics of Beauty, Dr. Timothy Patitsas, in the chapter entitled The City as Liturgy. Fascinating correlation here of how cities are liturgies, which I haven't heard it discussed anywhere else. It seems like an original insight that Dr. Patitsas puts forth, and it's compelling, I'd say. So here we go. This subsection is entitled Where Science and Religion Meet. In any case, the real reconciliation of science and religion, the meat of it, can be summed up like this. First of all, cities are liturgies. No, the identity is not total, but it is far more than a metaphor. Rather, organic order and self-organization in urban life look exactly like liturgy. Cities cycle through death and life, trial and error, procession and return. They also summon concerted human attention and effort in the attempt to remain open to the absolute unknown for the preservation and furthering of human flourishing and human emergence. Secondly, cities are not sui generis in terms of their type of order. Cities are but one of a huge number of examples of complex order in nature. We find emergence in the creation of the universe from the earliest moments of existence and all along through the chain of biological evolution. This leads any rational person to the third point. If we can, broadly speaking, describe cities, which, if they are healthy, are organically complex organisms, as liturgies, then it is possible to use a similar description for all the other many instances of organic order. Do other life forms also attain and maintain their organic order through patterned repetition, cycling repeatedly through death to life? And do they pass through uncertainty and openness to knowing, etc.? Well, the answer there is mixed, but it is mixed in a very instructive way. All organic order in the universe looks liturgical to one degree or another. All organic order in the universe looks liturgical to one degree or another. Even electrons spin around the nucleus in a kind of procession and return, a motion of death and life, in a way. But perhaps that's significant, but perhaps not very impressive. But here is a fact that is impressive. The more developed nature becomes, and the further along the evolutionary spectrum it lies, the more it looks like liturgy. The cycle of day to night, the seasons passing and returning, a plant's death and life cycle, and so forth, are already a proto-liturgy. Animals, too, exhibit ritual behavior, but political orders, cities, families, and societies are explicitly dependent upon ritual. Not only does order increase through liturgical processes in the natural world, but the more the order develops and more sophisticated the cosmos becomes, the more liturgical the processes creating the world look. Next section is entitled Roy Rappaport, Anthropologist of Ritual and Religion. So again, it isn't just animals who exhibit ritual behavior. One of my favorite pieces of evidence for this liturgical or ritualistic view of all natural order is the following quote from the anthropologist Roy Rappaport. He first defines ritual, and then he talks about its ubiquity in living nature. Quote, I take the term ritual to denote the performance of more or less invariant sequences of formal acts and utterances not entirely encoded by the performers. This definition, being extremely terse, demands elaboration and discussion. Before discussing its specific features, performance formality, invariance, inclusion of both acts and utterances, encoding by other than the performers, several general comments are in order. First, this definition encompasses much more than religious behavior. Psychiatrists, for instance, have used ritual rather similarly conceived, or the closely related, if not synonymous term, ceremony, to refer both to the pathological stereotype behaviors of some neurotics and to certain conventional, repetitive, but nevertheless adaptive interactions between people. In sociology and anthropology, ritual and ceremony may designate a large range of social events, not all of which are religious, or may denote the formal aspects of such events. And application of the term has not been restricted to human phenomena. Ethologists have used it virtually interchangeably with display to designate behavior they have observed not only among other mammals, but also among reptiles, birds, fish, and even members of other phyla. Rappaport continues. One may ask whether we observe, in the use of a common term by anthropologists, theologians, psychiatrists, and ethologists, nothing more than a label stretched to cover phenomena of such diversity that little is gained from attending to whatever similarities may prevail among them, or whether the use of a single term for such widely differing phenomena as the courtship dance of fiddler crabs and the Roman Mass recognizes significant commonalities underlying their undoubted differences. Surely some of the differences among instances of the general class ritual are both obvious and important. No one would be hard-pressed to distinguish the genuflections of Catholic priests from the gyrations of impassionate Crustacea, and it would be absurd to regard the former as no more than a mere complexification of the latter, or to minimize their differences in any other way. At the beginning, however, it may be more useful to attend to what is common to a class, or possible class, or vague or vacuous as these resemblances may seem, than to emphasize what may distinguish its members from each other, as striking as these differences may be. Prior attention to similarities does not preclude subsequent attention to differences, and it may help to place those differences in proper perspective. By noting first the ways in which religious and other animals resemble each other, it may be possible to distinguish them from each other more clearly later, and distinguishing religious from other ritual will be helpful in fashioning conceptions of the sacred, the numinous, and the holy. Our definition, then, encompasses not only human rituals, but also those stylized displays reported by ethologists to occur among the birds, the beasts, and even the insects. Close quote. Clearly, as you proceed from the spinning of electrons around nuclei up to star systems, seasons, plants, and animals, you find that emergent order looks more and more patterned, cyclical, and ritualistic. At last, you come to human life and to the apex of human life, the city. And there you see that organic natural order looks exactly like liturgy. Therefore, the answer to whether all organically emergent systems and organisms are liturgical is a qualified yes. But the qualification pushes the identity rather than undermines it. Because the higher the level of development in nature, the more literally do organically complex systems look like liturgies. It's much like asking whether a man's 7 children are biologically his own and having someone respond, quote, well, we can see the physical resemblances very clearly in the older ones, whereas in the newborn infant, it's hard to tell, close quote. Anyone can see that this qualified yes as to the resemblance to his children is stronger because it is qualified. The more the children develop, the more they look like him physically, they are his kids. And this is what we can say now of Darwinian evolution, that the further along the evolutionary spectrum it travels, the more liturgical things appear. Therefore, it is not wrong to at least ask who the father of that creation might be. Well, let's not rush our answer, but at least the question has now become a valid one. So you see, it isn't just human cities that resemble liturgies. In fact, every instance of organic life, of organic order, can broadly be termed liturgical. Meanwhile, there's a form of human development that is, in a sense, beyond even cities. At any rate, it can outlast any particular city. This form of human development, moreover, in the aggregate, has had more impact on human emergence than any other human social organization, including even cities. That development, of course, would be religion. When looking at the religions of the world, what we are seeing is the absolute pinnacle of human social organization. And what do we find within religions themselves? Well, that religions, even more than cities, derive their identity, their function, their existence, their persistence, their self-maintenance, and their self-organization from and through ritual. If we accept Homo sapiens as the apex of evolution, then we can see that all of evolution has been pointing to, in the end, human priesthood within nature. It's the end of that section. Next section is a reconciliation, not a conquest. So far, it looks like the world exists by being liturgical, and that, in fact, the more sophisticated and developed any piece of cosmic order is, the more blatantly that part of the world resembles liturgy. And it would also seem that liturgy, aka ritual, is far bigger than religion. Liturgy is just the way that our cosmos happens to exist, whether we like it or not. This is not yet a reconciliation between science and religion. One could argue that religions have evolved like all emergent organisms, and therefore they follow the universal cosmic laws of existence. So we don't yet have a reconciliation between science and religion, but things are starting to look mighty suspicious at any rate. The key to achieving the reconciliation is what you look at next. The fourth step is to turn the matter around. So far, I've been claiming to discern liturgy dimly or clearly everywhere that complex emergence or something like it appears in nature. In other words, I've been asking what religion sees when it looks at the new science of organic complexity. And the answer is, quote, to religious eyes, science is obviously discovering a cosmic liturgy. The sciences of emergence and complex order are discovering the ubiquity of ritual order, end quote. But now let's put the science of organic complexity in the driver's seat and ask what it sees when it looks at religion, and in particular at religious ritual. For Rappaport, the answer was simple enough. It is clear to objective scientific eyes that ritual in religion is the matrix through which human emergence has unfolded. Liturgy is the way in which chaos is converted to order within religions and within human identity more generally. And it is scientifically clear, too, that all of religion, not just religious ritual, functions in this way as a matrix whereby chaotic forces are turned into information, nothingness into existence, death into life. Moreover, we must admit that human identity, until very recently, always emerged through the mixture of religious ritual and religion. Even Socrates was religious, and so were the early scientists of the Enlightenment. This is the thesis of Rappaport's book, Ritual and Religion in the Making of Humanity. In the title, he means making literally that we call humanity is a product of ritual and religion. Rappaport is no pious fool. He rather strikes me as a hard-bitten agnostic anthropologist who knew what he was doing in his discipline, but humanity for him emerged through religion and ritual. There's no fifth step. Religion and science are now reconciled. A, religion believes that science has discovered a cosmic liturgy. B, science understands that religion, through its ritual character, is the organically complex system which produced human existence out of chaos. This is as far as the reconciliation can be safely pushed. No, the one has not conquered the other, and anyway, that would not be a reconciliation, but the onset of a permanent enmity between science and religion. So no, we haven't at all proven that the cosmos is a liturgy, any more than we can prove that religion is nothing but a further and very developed form of organic emergence. But what we have achieved is a reconciliation. From the standpoint of religion, we can now say, and still be totally scientific, that the cosmos highly resembles a vast liturgy. In fact, it seems that we are part of some vast cosmic ritual order. From the standpoint of science, we can now say that, no offense to religion, that religion is yet another instance of biological, organic emergence, a complexly ordered system that in its arising has managed to defeat chaos, conquer death, at least in some measure, and harness the passage of time and the production of increasing order, like other complexly ordered systems always have. Religions are alive. Many endure for centuries. And these living organisms have typically served to promote human emergence, even if imperfectly. Last section, after the reconciliation. At this point in the reconciliation, we are welcome to find other things to disagree about. For example, science ought to ask whether, having seen organic religion's close resemblance to other forms of chaos-defeating emergence, science itself can attempt the conscious design of non-religious ritual social forms that accomplish the same tasks, such as the state, political parties, or major sports teams. Why not design our own complex ritual order as we do in armies and in governments? This is exactly, of course, what many of those who oppose religion have argued for the last 200 years or more. So far, the attempt to create artificial social life has resulted in increasingly bloody wars and increasingly oppressive state control, even reaching to the point of outright genocides. The attempt is not going well, it's plain to see, because scientifically it's almost impossible to design artificial life. Also, unlike nations which have some basis in the organic order of blood or language, the modern technocratic state in a Frankenstein is a Frankenstein, a dead man walking. Divorce it from national sentiment and it will fall to pieces. Science can also, as it already does, interrogate religion for its actual effect on human emergence, and science can claim to be more organic and alive than certain kinds of religion, which seem to limit, distort, or crush human dignity. But the game can now be played in both directions. Religion will now have a penetrating questions of its own to ask of science. Since religion appears to be an organic product of emergence, how can any rational person justify the scientific animosity against religion? Isn't it the place of science to respect and even venerate all natural order? Why does this one instance of natural organic emergence alone earn the blind hatred of science? Is it possible that the scientific opposition to religion is just another example of the way in which the old Enlightenment science prefers dead linear order to living nonlinear order? Why this preference for dead knowability over the uncertain chance for living participation in mystery? Such a preference would seem perverse by any human standard. Isn't scientists' fear of organically complex religion just a result of the fact that modern science's true aim is to control and not knowledge? That science itself often isn't actually scientific, in other words? Also, why has science, free of all superstition and claiming to be completely rational, been unable to design a non-lethal alternative to religion in terms of an organically complex social organism? If scientists respond that they have so succeeded in the form of the scientific community itself, then religion can respond, yes, there you have succeeded, but only to the extent that you consistently rely upon the falsifiable hypothesis and not on untestable theories or stale ideologies. You claim to reject Christianity. You say that it is a myth. But your own community lives only by the death and resurrection of the word enacted through the ritual of testing falsifiable hypotheses. So I believe that we now have scientific evidence, if you care to see it, that the world is cosmic liturgy. And you've also got scientific evidence, if you care to see it, that religious liturgies are one more instance of organic order in the cosmos. Within this tension, science and religion appear to be reconciled. Not that one has conquered the other, as we have said, but that you have two perspectives on their relation, and both of them say the same thing about this relation, but in their own language. Science sees organic self-organization and complexity everywhere, including in religion and especially in cities and in religious liturgies. And religion notices that the whole cosmos seems to exist only by virtue of the operation of various liturgical patterns. But this organic account of the cosmos is just what the beauty-first account of creation could have taught us to expect. To this day, to this hour, Christ is still appearing to all that is. His beauty is still stirring non-being and being alike into eros for him. The creation still moves towards Christ and moves to share the life it receives from him with the creation around it. The whole world has fallen into eros with Christ and is imitating his ecstatic and self-emptying love by acting liturgically. You see what I mean by reconciliation of science with religion. They now exist in harmony with each other. They do not conquer each other. We are not to reduce one to the other. So this is an interview, and his interlocutor says, "This is incredible. I think I need a drink." And Dr. Patitsas concludes here, "Wild times, ain't they? I'm so glad to see the rise of a sophistication equal in our terms to what the Christian Romans had a millennium ago, and with air conditioning, electric cars, and antibiotics to boot. I'm so glad to be alive in this age with science learning what it is learning. We couldn't all be luckier. Of course, things could still go horribly wrong with the world and the human race. One thing I think a lot about is the threat posed to Western civilization by bad economic science. Unless we drag our economic science out of the gutter of a wrongly applied reductionism, we will too be distracted by social chaos and decline to enjoy this perfect moment." Also, artificial intelligence looms menacingly. There will always be new mountains to climb. Interviewer says, didn't you start by saying that Jane Jacobs wrote a book warning us not to fall into a dark age with an icon of Panagia next to her typewriter? Dr. Patitsas says, yes, and I had better find a nice icon right away as I now write my book on Jane Jacobs' paradigm shift in economic theory. Thank you for the reminder of strong hope. Thanks for listening.